Welcome everyone to the 10th and final episode of our first season of the Northern Spin podcast. My name's Michael Taylor, and as always, I'm joined by Chris Maguire.
10 already. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, I've been better.
Well, we're not going to mention...
I've had concussion. I banged my head at the weekend.
Absolutely.
So I might be a bit dazed.
And your beloved
I might be a bit depressed.
Well, that's
I
because...
was really pleased about the cricket. I was disappointed about England in the Rugby League World Cup semi-final in a half-empty Emirates Stadium. But apart from that, yeah, life's good.
And
I count my blessings.
You've not mentioned Burnley's 3-0 win
Anyway,
against
moving
Blackburn.
swiftly on.
Okay, now, this may be the final episode of Season 1, but the good news is that the first episode of Season 2 begins next week. Hooray for that. We've got so much to talk about. We're going to be doing a Northern Spin extra podcast this week, which will be available on Thursday. Thanks to our friends at What Media and Oscar Technology, because without them, we couldn't do what we do, could we, Michael?
No, absolutely. Oscar Technology, top recruitment company in the Manchester area, working all over the world, finding quality candidates for growing companies.
And we went to see Andy Morell, who's the boss of Oscar Technology last week.
Wasn't it a great atmosphere? I'm really intrigued by workplaces.
Yeah.
Like the offices here at What Media with their pool table outside. But what a really interesting environment. And like when we went to see River Capital over in Liverpool.
Yeah, it's just vibrant.
It just seemed like a vibrant, friendly environment, people coming up. You can just tell, can't you?
No, absolutely. No, we enjoyed that visit as well. Oscar Technology is now the number one recruitment company to work for in the Northwest, and it's easy to see why, and we're delighted they're our sponsor. Now, I've got some personal news for you, Michael.
Go on.
Do you remember I once told you I'd met Boris Johnson at Legoland when he was with his family?
Wasn't Peppa Pig World?
No.
Definitely Legoland. So was he with which of his wives and how many of his children were with him?
He was with his middle wife, Marina Wheeler,
yeah,
and their 4 children. But a long time ago, actually, before he was Prime Minister, in fact, before he was Mayor, we didn't really talk. We just looked at each other. But that was enough, apparently. He gave me a nod of his tassel blonde hair, and I waved at him. And anyway, I thought nothing of it. But lo and behold, it looks like I'm now going to be made a peer in Johnson's resignation list. So I'll be joining the House of Lords.
Well, I know what you've done there. There are people far, far less deserving of a peerage than you, Chris, including Ross Kempsell, aged 30, and Charlotte Owen, in her 20s, are going into the House of Lords in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. I think it's absolutely disgraceful that someone should leave office and be given the honour, the privilege of being able to dispense honours to their mates. It's absolutely shocking.
Well, I'm in agreement with you there. I'm obviously Paul Dacre's being tipped for one, the Daily Mail.
Yeah, the Daily Mail editor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's questionable for the kind of poison that he's dripped onto British society for the last 40 years.
What about Teesside Mayor Ben Houchin?
Well, that kind of scuppers his ambitions to be Prime Minister, doesn't it, if he's put in the House of Lords?
Yeah. I mean, listen, this
but
is
you're
the
not
reason
happy
why.
about any of this,
I'm not happy.
Clearly.
I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a phrase...
Tell me why you're not happy.
Well, you used the word grubby a lot in the last episode, as did Keir Starmer. This grubby little deal, you look at the last few weeks, right? The grubby little deal to appoint or to reappoint Suella Braverman as Home Secretary 6 days after being sacked for multiple security breaches.
Yeah, then there's Matt Hancock.
Yeah, abandoning his constituents to earn £400,000 on I'm a Celebrity. Now, I should just say, I know you don't watch I'm a Celebrity. I watch a little bit of it. He's coming across very well. People won't like that. He shouldn't be on The Jungle. Agreed, but he's coming across very well. Bully boy, Gavin Williamson, sacked by 2 previous PMs. I refuse to call him sir. If you're listening, Gavin, come on and put your own defence forward. Gets invited back by Rishi Sunak despite being twice sacked from previous cabinets and being the subject of an ongoing bullying investigation for a non-job. Now we've got
Chris,
the situation.
you're sounding...
sound like you.
Yeah, we sound like we've got you completely politically on side. I've been working on the culture stuff with you.
Yeah.
Whereas actually you blindsided me and you're actually politically getting right up to speed on this. You can see them for what they are now, can't you?
No,
surely.
No.
You can see.
No, I can see some of them for what they are, and I can see Boris Johnson for what he is. Like, Boris Johnson has got the morals of an alley cat. He wants his former 30-year-old political advisor, Ross Kempsell, who interviewed him, I think, about making buses, London buses. Former personal assistant, Charlotte Owen. It's outrageous. 4 Tory MPs, including his mate, Nadine Dorries, have been nominated for peerages, but they've agreed to defer taking up these peerages because they don't want to trigger a by-election, which everybody knows they would lose. Then you've got Ben Houchin.
I mean, honestly, Chris, just answer me this. I'm being completely serious at this. I don't mind experienced politicians, whichever political colour, people like Geoffrey Howe, Leon Britton, Ken Clarke, serious Tories, making their way into the house of Douglas Hurd for another one, and getting a peerage and being able to use their wisdom that they've accrued through years in office as a result of their achievements and their statesmanlike abilities to be able to scrutinise legislation. I get that.
Yeah.
But what on earth has Nadine Dorries ever done?
No, I agree. The thing is,
she would never have been in government were it not for the fact that she was a misty-eyed Boris Johnson fan.
My view is that you want people who've devoted a lifetime of service for public service, and they deserve to be given a peerage, and that's what they should be for. The idea of giving a 30-year-old or a 27-year-old and giving them £300 a day in expenses for life, I mean, and it begs a question as well with Liz Truss. I mean, she was Prime Minister for 45 days. Now, we don't know yet. Does she get a resignation list? And if she did, who would she put on that resignation list?
I'll tell you what surprised me at the cenotaph at the weekend. Every surviving British Prime Minister, and the line that they're all there. There's Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, John Major, and then, oh my God, Liz Truss was Prime Minister. So she gets to go to the cenotaph as a former Prime Minister. She gets to go to state occasions, despite only having done the job for about 10 days.
Do you think it gets less and less? Do you think Rishi Sunak will show his social bottle and block these nominations?
No, I don't. There are no indications so far that Rishi Sunak has enough confidence to take tough internal decisions that will seriously damage relations with the hard right of the Tory party. He's consistently tried to hold this flimsy internal coalition together, as you quite correctly said, Chris, with the appointments of Williamson, Braverman and Raab, who again has been under scrutiny last week, despite their obvious unsuitability and they go completely counter to his supposed commitment to accountability and honesty in public life. So I've seen no indications it'll do so, but yet it is an open goal. It's an absolute opportunity for him to reset his premiership, but he can't. He's a prisoner of the ERG and the Tory hard right. It's been a truly, truly shameful episode.
I'm going to give a slightly different spin on it, because I think actually things are a bit more normal now under Sunak than they were under Truss. It wouldn't be hard to be more normal than under the Liz Truss government. He did set his stall out about this will be the party for integrity and this, that and the other. And I think the problem is that some of his appointments, are clearly as a result of dodgy deals to try and keep the right of the party happy. I think he'll find it very, very difficult to block these moves, because if he blocks any Boris move nominations, then that'll alienate certain sections of his party as well.
That's fair comment. But I'll tell you what's interesting though, Chris. So consistently, Sunak's attack line to Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions is, but you backed Jeremy Corbyn. Why isn't the retort with, hold on a minute, you served Boris Johnson? I mean, Corbyn may be many things. One is he's in the wilderness, and we'll talk about an issue with him later on maybe. But actually, Boris Johnson, as you said, has the morals of an alley cat, and has actually proved that he was unfit to hold office. Not that he might have been a bad choice for someone to hold office, which is something I accept.
But Rishi Sunak could turn around and say, albeit slightly mealy-mouthed because he left it so late in the day, I did resign from Boris Johnson's government. He could say that. I think, like I say, I think we need to judge people on what they do now. What I think everyone is in agreement now.
You always want to give them space, don't you? Time again. The Tories prove they're unfit to govern, and there you go.
No, I think there's other things we need to talk about.
Well, there are. I mean, Jeremy Hunt's going to be slashing public spending and putting up taxes this week.
I mean, what's interesting is that this period of time of Liz Truss's government, everyone's now going to basically dismantle everything she ever said, and she'll be airbrushed out of the history books. I mean, I noticed that
her debt won't, though.
Well, no. I mean, it's a figure that I heard today.
The harm to the public finances can't be just erased with the swipe of a hand.
No, 45 days, and I heard an interview today where they estimated that the cost to the government was, or the cost to the economy was £1 billion a day.
And then you can add on to that all the money that Rishi Sunak squandered with the bounce back loans and the fraud that he, with his poorly managed, poorly thought through schemes during lockdown, the amount that he...
No, that's where we're in disagreement, because you keep calling it fraud, and I would say some aspects of what he did didn't work, but I would say furlough per se...
No, Chris, there was fraud. There is fraud.
No one's in dispute there was fraud, but you can't do what you always do, which is basically, say everything that he did was wrong.
No, I didn't.
Parts of what he did were wrong.
No, I didn't. But what I did say was they didn't correctly set up the scheme in order to police the fraud that it unleashed. Secondly, I've been very critical of the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which I thought was unnecessary and costly. And I think a lot of the hospitality businesses, though they may have benefited marginally, would have done okay anyway once lockdown ended. I think the furlough scheme was an act of great bravery by any Western government that was able to do that, to support people to stay at home in order to blah, 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 save lives, protect the NHS. No, don't try and mischaracterize what I'm saying.
Okay.
But it remains a demonstrable fact that Rishi Sunak is as responsible as Liz Truss for the poor state of our public finances, because he was Chancellor who squandered all that money.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of other things. Investment zones look like they're going to be
they were a bad idea.
It was a bad idea. It was short-termism. I mean, Jeremy Hunt's going to announce his autumn statement. I mean, I was listening once again. I mean, obviously, I think what Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak will do, I think they'll prove themselves to be a pair that can keep costs down and try and get the economy back on an even keel. But I don't see a lot there in terms of growth. But one thing I want to talk about is Blackpool. Now, last week, the government announced a £40 million investment into Blackpool, which will be used to demolish and relocate Blackpool Magistrates Court, freeing up Blackpool Central site for £300 million worth of leisure developments. Now, it wasn't a coincidence that coincided with an event that was taking place in Blackpool, where the new old Levelling Up Minister Michael Gove was chairing a discussion. He said it was, I quote, the biggest single regeneration project in Blackpool in all our lifetimes. Now, that's 40 million quid in all our lifetimes. What's your take on that, Michael?
I think that's overstating things somewhat. It shows quite how far Blackpool's fallen, that this latest straw that's being clutched at is heralded in such terms. So let me just loop back, if you want, and try and give you some insights into what's been going on in Blackpool for the last 20 years. From 2000 to 2007, Blackpool effectively bet everything on casinos. The Labour government started a competition for the award of Britain's first super casino. I covered every twist and turn of this story, with Blackpool's efforts to reinvent itself as the Las Vegas of the North, or the Atlantic City of our West Coast. And the businessman Trevor Hemmings, who owns Preston North End, but has owned all sorts of businesses in the north, including Scottish and Newcastle breweries over the years, he bought up land. He owns a lot of land around your way, doesn't he?
He does,
Chorley, yeah. He shipped over the mayor of Atlantic City, New Jersey, to make the case. It was going to give a new purpose and a boom to poor, tired old Blackpool. We hosted round tables, breakfast events, we ran interviews with key people like Alan Cavill from Blackpool Council, and then a bombshell. On the 30th of January 2007, the Independent Casino Advisory Panel announced that the winner, as it so often was for lots of these regeneration projects that had put in the best bid with the best business case, wasn't Blackpool, but Manchester. And they were going to get the super casino, and it was going to be located where the Etihad Stadium, on the site next to it now, where the new Co-op Live Arena is going. Shortly after that, Gordon Brown, possibly it's argued under pressure from Paul Dacre at the Daily Mail, scrapped the whole casino thing. I looked it up in Gordon Brown's biography, and he puts it down to being the son of a manse, which is a Scottish Presbyterian minister. So maybe, his kind of strong moral case went actually thinking we've unleashed gambling too far, and it coincided with a whole load of measures to actually clamp down on advertising from offshore online casinos as well. So you'll have remembered all that when you were editing the Chorley Guardian.
I do. And the thing is, everyone said that, I remember those headlines, which was, and we've spoken about this, if ever there's a headline which got a question mark next to it, the answer is always no. I mean, Andrew Marr says that, and other people have said that as well. Is this the end of Blackpool when the Super Casino went to Manchester? No, it's not. Clearly, it's not. I think one of the challenges, and we've spoken about this before, is that what does Blackpool stand for? Now, clearly, Blackpool is a tourism mecca. It's second only to London as the UK top tourist destination. I had a conversation last week. I was in the sauna of my gym, and
too much information.
I was talking to this guy, and we were talking about, I think it was called Works Week or Wakes Week.
Wakes Week,
yeah. And it was a period of time where, and he knew everything. He said, look, Chorley used to go out on this particular time of the month, and then the whole working area, the whole of the town would basically shut up shop and go to Blackpool for a week or 2 weeks. It'd be Bolton, it'd be Wigan, it'd be Chorley as well.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I went to Blackpool a couple of weeks ago for the illuminations, and the illuminations are great, don't get me wrong, and you walk on the prom and they're great. The problem is that I don't necessarily know what Blackpool stands for beyond tourism. Some of those roads that I walked down, and I wasn't on the main prom, were dreadful. And whenever you look at health figures about life expectancy, people talk about Blackpool as having a particularly low life expectancy in parts of Blackpool as well. Blackpool Airport hasn't operated commercial flights since 2014. You got a parking ticket for visiting Blackpool recently as well.
That's fine.
A lot of talk about Strictly Come Dancing is going to be, obviously being held at Blackpool 1 week every series. But what does Blackpool stand for? I don't know.
Well, when Blackpool has always been searching for a new purpose, it failed with the casino thing. I think if that had happened, it wouldn't have improved the life of Blackpool at all. I know that you like the film Wonderful Life, and in that alternate universe where Bedford Falls becomes governed by a Donald Trump type character and it becomes a sleazy casino, I think Blackpool, it would have unleashed an awful lot of new social problems. One of the big issues is, and it came out in a report in 2013 by a group called the Centre for Social Justice, it said Blackpool has become a dumping ground for people facing problems such as unemployment, social exclusion and substance abuse. And this report that has looked to the future rather than the past has said what it actually needs is almost to level all that really poor quality housing 2 streets behind the seafront and to think about a completely different offer. But people need to have jobs to go to. They need to have a different tourist offer that can't just be about seaside resorts. Despite the fact, obviously, we're facing climate change, it's not enough. And I have heard mumblings too that the powerful Blackpool lobby are holding out for something from government which is conditional on their support or them not blocking Morecambe's far more ambitious and audacious bid to bring the Eden Project North to Morecambe, which is something I have done some work for, so just to declare an interest. And I think that's a really, really interesting and ambitious way of thinking about the future of a neighbouring seaside resort.
I think the Eden Project in Morecambe would be phenomenal. I absolutely do, because it's not just about the attraction, it's about the message it's sending out, especially around sustainability and the environment. Like I say, I'm not from the north. My wife is. She goes to Blackpool Illuminations every year. She loves it. Me personally, I don't get it. But that said, I think this £40 million, what it is, it's good news. Let's not kid ourselves. It's good news. But what I would say in relation to that is that, and does it sort of suggest that levelling up might be back on the agenda? Not sure. I think it was important that it was
piecemeal. I was in London last week and I had the opportunity to travel on the Elizabeth line, and I was just standing there looking up in absolute awe at what a marvellous piece of engineering it is and the cost that it has been and what an addition it is to our nation's capital. And yet we're scrambling around urinating into Pringles cartons on packed commuter trains.
Yeah. Did you get caught when you urinated onto a Pringle?
I didn't actually do that.
Okay. All right, listen, I think that's all for the first part of Northern Spin. After the interval, we're going to talk about all things Labour. Put you on the spot for once, Michael. Well, welcome back after the interval. This is Northern Spin, our 10th episode, our final episode of our first season. We start a new season next week. I'm going to put you on the spot in a second, Michael, about Andy Burnham, his decision to choose Labour MP, Kay Green as Deputy Mayor, which surprised me. I'm hoping you can shed some light on that. But before then, I want to ask about a comment by Labour's Shadow Health Secretary and rising star, Wes Streeting. We touched on Mr. Corbyn earlier, Jeremy Corbyn. He was caught on a mic describing the former leader as senile. It was at PMQs last week. He later apologised but said it was poor judgment by him. It's said in jest, but it was poor judgment by one of Labour's rising stars. What was your take on that, Michael? Because if a Conservative had said that, you'd be all over it.
Not necessarily. I mean, they say worse things. They do worse things. It was undoubtedly a comment in poor taste. But Corbyn, who despite living in Parliament practically his whole adult life, doesn't understand either procedure, nor do his supporters understand the difference between an off-the-cuff comment and a health policy on dementia. He was trying to make an intervention at the wrong time in PMQs. So I think the murmuring on the Labour front bench, and it wasn't a speech. He didn't say, today's speech, I'm going to denounce Jeremy Corbyn as being senile. He didn't. He just went, what's wrong with him? Why is he doing this? And Wes Streeting went, I think it's Jeremy's senile, because he didn't understand that it was an inappropriate moment at which to make an intervention. And I think the body language of Lindsay Hoyle demonstrated the same sort of irritation, though he didn't use something like that. Now, there is a sensitivity over Corbyn that he should be kicked out because it would address the accusation that Keir Starmer tried to make Jeremy Corbyn PM, right? I never did. I never delivered a single leaflet or knocked on a single door and advocated anybody to vote for Jeremy Corbyn to make him Prime Minister while I was in the Labour Party. It was something I was never prepared to do.
What Wes Streeting did really well, actually, is he owned it straight away, though.
Yeah,
That's where I give him credit. And he took to social media. He said, look, it was said in jest. I apologise. It was the wrong choice of words. I always say to people, if you make a mistake, own it, move on.
Well, and all the Twitter bros like Owen Jones and Aaron Bastani and Matt Zarb-Cousin, they randomly will call people nonces. Owen Jones, who's a particularly horrible individual, he actually did do interviews where he purposely went out of his way to say that Joe Biden is barely sentient. So for him to then show this righteous indignation over an incident like this, I think it's completely confected outrage by Jeremy Corbyn's supporters as a means to attack Wes Streeting.
I wouldn't give Owen Jones the time of day. I wouldn't. And I think we should
I
discuss
know.
it because he's not a nice bit of work. Now, Michael, I was really intrigued by something that I spotted last week. And I thought to myself, I'm hoping you can shed some light on it.
If I can help, Chris, then I will.
Kate Green. Now, Kate Green wasn't an MP that I knew particularly well. She resigned as the MP for Stretford and Urmston in Trafford, triggering a by-election, date to be confirmed. She was announced by Andy Burnham, the mayor, as a preferred choice for his role. His a preferred choice for the role of Deputy Mayor of Greater Manchester, replacing Baroness Bev Hughes. Now, I didn't actually know a great deal about the role of Deputy Mayor, and I didn't actually know the background to this. So can you tell me what happened?
Well, as the author of the academic thesis, Devolution and Democracy, Networks and Narratives in Greater Manchester, I would be more than happy to try to explain some of the labyrinth structures of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. I should be able to do this in about 40 minutes or so.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, let's do an extra.
No. So, no, really, really succinctly, joking aside. So Andy Burnham appointed Bev Hughes after his first election win in 2017 to do the job of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Fire. Right. So each area has what's called a police and crime commissioner. Andy Burnham has effectively outsourced that part of his job as Metro Mayor to another individual. In the initial case with Bev Hughes, the former MP for Stretford and Urmston, and she's in the House of Lords. Now, he made the argument at the time that Bev had been a counter-terrorism minister, an immigration minister, and that the role of Metro Mayor, just as it needed cabinet-level experience to negotiate with government, to manage public services in a mature way, needed people with strong government experiences to stabilise and bring some hard, fast experience to presumably what was he regarded as an amateur slipshod operation in Greater Manchester.
Yeah, it was an interesting one because Kate Green isn't a politician that I know particularly well. And incidentally, if Andy Burnham or Kate Green want to come on this show, they'd be very welcome. We'd like to do a piece with them.
I'm sure, yeah, definitely.
And I was surprised by Andy Burnham's choice. So I did a little bit of research on it. The only good thing, or the only thing I could find out about Kate Green of any note was when she, as Labour's shadow education secretary, she suggested COVID-19 pandemic would be a, quote, good crisis for her party. And I thought at the time, you know what? That's such a crass statement to make. And it's the sort of thing that stays with somebody. She did apologise, to be fair to her. It was certainly a heavy use of words. It just got me thinking, though, that given that Kate Green is replacing another former Labour MP in Bev Hughes after 5 years in the role, could Andy Burnham not have appointed a council leader or somebody with local government experience from a Greater Manchester background? Because one would have thought there would have been people out there. You
may say that, Chris. I couldn't possibly comment.
Yes, that sounds like you've been watching too much of Yes Minister. Like I say, I just thought to myself, you know Labour better than me, Michael. But do you have to be a former Labour MP to be considered for the deputy mayor's role?
I think maybe more than that. You have to be the former Labour MP for Stretford and Urmston.
Well, very tactfully put, but it's really, really interesting. And like I say, I think it's important we shine a light on that because what Labour have set themselves apart from trying to be is above the Conservatives. And Andy Burnham has made an appointment.
It is a political role.
It's a political role. Yeah, it's a political role, and you can understand the reason why that job is so big. He does need to bring people in to assist him. But like I say, if every time Andy Burnham needs to add somebody to his team, he goes back to the well of Labour MPs, especially Labour MPs who are retiring, I think that's a kick in the teeth to local government up here in the northwest and in Greater Manchester, and I don't think that's a good move forward. But listen, Andy Burnham, if you're listening, you want to come on the Northern Spin, feel free. I think that's all for the second part of Northern Spin. We're going to come back after the break when we're going to be talking about your continued attempts at trying to make me more northern.
Welcome back to the Northern Spin podcast for the section we call the fun bit. And Chris, I understand you've solved the Bahrain mystery.
Yeah, people have been talking about that, like the old Bermuda Triangle, and we've discussed the Bahrain mystery. As you know, Michael, Northern Spin has been doing very well in Apple's podcast charts. Got as high as 6 actually in the UK podcast charts for our category, but in Bahrain we've hit as high as 3rd, and I couldn't work out why. Anyway, my former deputy editor at the Bristol Evening Post, lovely guy called Stan Skowska, who is now the managing director or the managing editor of Gulf Daily News in Bahrain, he's been promoting Northern Spin to his contacts, and that's the reason why we are as high as number 3 in the Bahrain charts.
Well, thank you very much, Stan. That's really good. Do you call him Stan the Man?
Everyone calls him Stan the Man.
Oh,
Stan,
really?
If you're listening, Stan the Man, we like
okay.
you.
So I'm going to ask you a question now.
Okay.
And your answer will go a long way to deciding whether we can do a second series.
I think I
Northern
can
Spin.
preempt the question. No is the answer. I do not support Burnley.
Tumbleweed. Anyway, so as you know, tickets have gone on sale over the weekend. A lot of people spent a lot of time in queues on the phone to buy tickets to see the Northern national treasure that is Peter Kay and his first tour in 12 years. But the question I've got to ask you is, well, the first one is, do you like Peter Kay?
Yeah, I've seen
Who
him.
doesn't like Peter Kay?
Yeah, seen him in concert.
Yeah, brilliant. And the second question is, do you like Phoenix Nights? Dum, dum, dum.
Phoenix Nights. Of course. Now, Michael, there's some questions can cause deep offence, and to ask me whether I like Phoenix Nights or have I heard of Phoenix Nights is an absolute outrage. And I'm going to show the sort of indignation you show to me when I ask you a question, when I, say that you're not being impartial enough. Michael, I love Phoenix Nights.
Hey.
I love Brian Potter. I love Jerry St. Clair. I love Den Perry, Ray Vaughan, Max and Paddy.
Kenny, Big Kenny.
Absolutely. 20 years ago. There's only ever 2 series of, Phoenix Nights. It's a bit like Fawlty Towers. People think there was, series after series of Fawlty Towers. There weren't many.
And The Office.
Yeah, absolutely. Only 2 off. And actually, I think there's a really good case for saying that a series had only got 2 really good series in it. Yeah. What did you like about Phoenix Nights?
The writing. The complete absurdity of it, the fact it's massively on PC. I mean, you could never get away with some of the jokes in there now. Almost trivialising human trafficking and human slavery of 2 Chinese workers that they had working in the kitchen at the Phoenix and ridiculing them. The casual racism, the homophobia. But apart from that, I found it absolutely hilarious. And I brought my kids up on it, and they'd go to other kids' houses and they go, Dad, are we a strange family? Because other families haven't heard of Phoenix Nights.
That should be on every national curriculum.
It should. And we honestly, we can go in the car. So I chatted about this at the weekend with my kids as we were driving up to Lancaster, or my son Matt was driving me up to Lancaster, where as we were going past the, strangely enough, as we were going past the Chorley exit, clearly near where you live, I did recall that I have one dad joke. Now, you're known for your dad jokes.
I know, yeah. What was your dad joke?
Well, when we're driving up on the M61, I look over at Winter Hill to the transmitter, and I say to Matt, I went to a wedding there once. And he goes, what was it like? And I say, not very good, but the reception was great.
Yeah, and then you tell me about tumbleweed. I mean, literally, if that is your one dad joke, there's a reason for that.
But my son Matt, I asked him what he liked best on Phoenix Nights, and he said it was the folk band fronted by Tim Healy singing Could They Call Half a Shilling, singing a folk song to the tune of Chippy Tea by the Lancashire Hot Pots, and it was said, send the buggers back.
Yeah.
And I also like Clinton Baptiste.
Yeah, he was a character. I mean, we both...
I'm getting the word.
We've both met a few of these people, haven't we?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I know Justin Moorhouse quite well. He lived over the hill from me. And same with Ted Robbins, who's Paul McCartney's cousin. Both really lovely blokes. Justin, of course, had his face painted like a tiger for the whole of the second series.
That's right.
And he's a massive Man United fan, but they made him wear a City shirt for the whole series as well. I think my favourite episode, though, has to be the Family Fun Day.
Yeah, well, you know what? It got me thinking, actually, I think I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah.
I think I do generally because, and I'm going to get my kids to watch it and see what they think about it because, I mean, they're like 19 and 22. I mean, in terms of Chorley, like I say, I used to be the editor of the Chorley Guardian for nearly 6 years.
Okay.
Dave Spikey is from Chorley, so
You meet him?
yeah, I met him quite a few times actually, but he lives.
He's a really nice fella, isn't he?
Yeah. At least he used to live in sort of Whitley Woods area. So I used to see him walking with his wife across Curling Park, just at the back of where he lives.
He's not singing songs in Asda and Chorley now.
No.
Black
But
bin
I
bags.
wonder how many people go up to him and say Jerry Sinclair. But I think they've moved on now.
The compare without compare.
That's a line that I use when I host events. I say, Chris Maguire, the compare without compare. I hadn't realised where it had come from. So Dave Spikey, I apologise. Now, Steve Royal, I know quite well. Steve Royal finished
He's
third.
on Radio Lancashire, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And if you ever go to Blackpool, which we mentioned earlier, he does Panto there and has done for about 50,000 years. He is Mr. Panto.
Right.
Finished third. Britain's Got Talent last year. His daughter was in the same year as my daughter at school as well. And I once played in a charity cricket match with Ted Robbins.
Who's the guy that plays Den Perry?
Yeah, that's right. A friend of mine called Dave Swanton fixed it up as well. And just
Very good.
real character.
Yeah, he went to a celebrity cricket match at Ramsbottom. I saw him there. My son Louis went up to him at Ramsbottom and said, "You got a nerve showing your face around here, Perry?"
Yeah, he's a comedian as well, is he? Your son,
He
Louis?
is actually. Yeah, I think he'd make a very good comedian with Louis. Yeah. Anyway, we're on to culture, Chris. So last week we talked about books. I tried to make some suggestions to you. So how did you get on with a true crime story by Joseph Knox or the Mank Noir trilogy by my mate Dave Nolan?
Well, I'm disappointed actually. The reason being that I actually took you up on your advice and I went onto Audible and I read the reviews of Dave Nolan's books and I thought that's right up my street. I like that. Crime, blood and guts, fiction. And then he's not available on Audible. So Audible, if you're listening, you need to pull your finger out. Joseph Knox, however, is. So he's on my wish list. So I'll be adding him to future books that I'll be listening to.
Great. No, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's set in Manchester, around Manchester University. So it's a particular resonance for me as well. So you mentioned your rather limited and not very northern musical taste in a previous podcast, saying that you liked Roy Orbison. Now, nothing wrong with that.
Incidentally, Roy Orbison met his wife in Batley, Northern Link. So there is a Northern
Batley
Link.
Variety Club.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, she was quite young at the time, to be fair, but we'll move on from that.
Oh, no. Yeah. Anyway, so one of my favourites is Richard Hawley, who's a Sheffield-based crooner with a very distinctive voice, very much in that style. He even looks like a 1950s American, like you'd bump into him at a diner in Arkansas or something. Honestly, Chris, I think you'll like him. I've seen him a few times. He's really cool, very, very northern. It's an open goal for you to improve your northern credentials.
I'm not going to lie. I mean, I did actually stumble across him recently, and his voice is too deep. He's like a Barry White, you know.
It's a bit deep, but it's not too deep.
And
what's wrong with Barry White anyway?
Well, I'm not a fan of Barry White either, but I mean, Roy Orbison is up there on a pedestal. And to be honest with you, I mean, he's a great singer, Richard Hawley, but he's no Roy Orbison.
Okay, but you're prepared to give him a go?
I'll give him a go.
If I give you a little playlist.
Richard, if you're listening, I'll give you a go.
Fantastic. Right, this has been Northern Spin. That was the fun bit. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to What Media for producing this. Real alchemists. They completely bring this to life. And thanks as well to Oscar Technology, eh, Chris?
Absolutely as well. And to your son, Elliot Taylor, for providing the music to today's podcast.
Thank you, Elliot. This has been Northern Spin. My name's Michael Taylor.
And mine is still Chris Maguire. Thank you.